And we're here for a very serious purpose, Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse.
Well, he could start by removing himself and his fascist goons from the Capitol immediately, as they are the epicenter of the global criminal enterprise that is operating in DC right now. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. Well, I'm sure you've heard by now that DC's crime rate has dropped by 26% in the last year, and violent crime is at a 30-year low in our nation's capital. This federal takeover of DC has nothing to do with curbing crime whatsoever, because if it did, Trump would have deployed the National Guard on this day, one of the most violent days in American history. When it was over, 7 people would die as a result of the violence that occurred on January 6th. Here's NBC's DC-based correspondent, Jonathan Allen.
Anna, I have lived in the Washington metropolitan area for my entire life, almost 50 years now. I've lived in the city for 20 years. The most violent moment in my life in Washington, D.C., the greatest cause of a threat, not only physical threat, but bigger threat to the country and certainly to law enforcement officers, was January 6th, 2021, when Donald Trump's supporters, his allies, some people who currently work for him, charged into the Capitol, beat cops, screamed profanities at them, yelled, "Kill the cops," said they wanted to hang the vice president of the United States. And Donald Trump's response to that here in the nation's capital, at the Capitol building, was to pardon everyone who was involved and in some cases rehire them into his government. So watching this play out in the White House briefing room without any mention of the violent crime that was committed on his behalf in Washington, D.C. is a little unusual.
Unusual is an understatement, Jonathan. That's because Trump's authoritarian takeover of DC with a federalized police force has, again, nothing to do with curbing crime and everything to do with his craven abuse of power and his desire for an authoritarian government. Here is the always, always brilliant Rachel Matto.
You think it's really about crime? You think it's really about being tough on crime? Do you want to maybe track down the axe and machete triple murderer Trump just released to the streets of Orlando to go ask him if he thinks it's about being tough on crime? Or you maybe want to pop in to ask Ghislaine at that Bureau of Prisons crown jewel facility that kind of looks like a community college? You want to go ask her? Think it's because he's so tough on crime? That said, let's be generous here. Maybe it's not really just a generic tough on crime thing. Maybe it's specifically because it's DC, which is the seat of the U.S. federal government. So even for a city enjoying a 30-year low in violent crime, maybe that's still just an intolerable amount of crime, specifically because it's DC, and DC is where the federal government is, and maybe he's just really sensitive about protecting the federal government. Maybe he's really sensitive and really focused when it comes to protecting the seat of the federal government from any kind of crime. January 6th, no, forget about that. He's just sensitive about it now. Maybe that's it. Well, let's see. Today's Monday. On Friday, this happened. A sustained violent attack on the headquarters of the federal government Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. See all those little pockmarks, those little holes? Those are bullet holes in the CDC. The gunman reportedly tried to get into the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. Security guards turned him away. He then drove to a nearby business, a nearby pharmacy, and took up a shooting position there. The Associated Press reports today that the man fired more than 180 shots into the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. More than 180 shots fired. He was found with 5 guns, including 4 long guns, and bullets that he fired at the CDC broke at least 150 windows. The bullets pierced blast-resistant windows in multiple buildings and spat glass shards into multiple offices. One police officer was killed. The gunman died as well. It's not clear if he shot himself or was shot by law enforcement. It is a miracle, obviously, that CDC personnel other than the police officer protecting them were not killed. The head of the agency that includes the CDC, Donald Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy, posted this online after the shooting. Then he posted this one as well. This is what he was posting the day after the shooting at the CDC, when a gunman fired more than 180 bullets into the headquarters of the Centers for Disease Control. This was the reaction of the man in charge of that agency. This was his response. It wasn't until later and after he finished posting his fishing pictures that he got around to expressing condolences for the, shooting or whatever. This major attack on a federal government facility, again, 180 shots fired into the CDC. This major attack on a federal government facility has so far garnered no response whatsoever from President Donald Trump, let alone an armed response into Atlanta, where the CDC headquarters is.
I mean, they are absolute psychopaths. I know I use that word quite a bit since Trump came into office, but it really is true. The CDC is shot up. A police officer gives his life to protect the employees of the CDC, and the director of that agency posts phishing photos. It's the same lie they tell us when they send these fat thugs dressed as ICE agents. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's very obvious to me that a majority of these ICE agents are not professional law enforcement agents. I mean, or not federal law enforcement agents, I should say, federal. There's a big distinction between federal law enforcement agents and local. I'll save that for another time, or ask me if you see me. After hardworking immigrants who have committed no crimes except wanting to tree trim our city blocks and keep our neighborhoods looking good.
Porque por el presidente de Donald Trump que está tirando todos los inmigrantes todo para afuera. ¿Qué culpa tenemos nosotros?
¿Qué tiempo estás sin trabajo?
Yo tengo 6 meses sin trabajo.
¿Y cómo estás pagando los biles?
Yo estoy viviendo en la calle, vivo en la calle. Yo sé trabajar, yo lo sé trimear todos estos árboles. A ver, algunos de estos hermanitos, a ver si lo pueden hacer. Yo sé que no lo pueden hacer. Mira esta pobre muchacha, tiene cáncer y tiene todo. Tiene poco de vivir, tiene poco tiempo de estar viviendo. Y mire qué es lo que están haciendo ellos. No somos criminales, tal vez.
And allow me to remind everyone watching that both Presidents Obama and Biden focused immigration resources on national security threats, like deporting actual undocumented criminals, whereas Trump is solely focused on emptying America of brown people. Trump has long admired the most evil of men in history, from Hitler to modern-day dictators like Vladimir Putin and Bolsonaro, whose own country prosecuted him the way that we should have done to Trump. And I'm referring to, of course, Brazil. And now Trump is punishing Brazil because they went after his authoritarian fascist buddy, Bolsonaro. And so do the rest of Trump's authoritarian regime. J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, RFK Jr., Russell Vought, and the lot of them. They are all in on the gig because, after all, cruelty is the point with MAGA. They are the criminals. They are the lawless ones. You know, I thought this post from journalist Terry Moran was very insightful. He posted it after Trump's insane press conference on Monday. I'm going to start reading it about a third of the way through. They're standing and they're screaming at them an inch away from their face, and then they start spitting in their face. And I said, you tell them you spit and we hit. They spit, we hit. And by the way, Trump loves to say that. That's one of his favorite one-liners. And they get hit real hard. They're rough police. They don't have crime. We're not going to have crime either. That sentence makes absolutely no sense, as neither of the rest of his rambling spree did. And then here's where Moran weighs in. This is a man ostentatiously in love with violence because he is a weak man. Trump will be praised to the skies by MAGA and the submissive shell that was once the GOP for what he did and said today. The trolls are giddy with delight. But what we saw at that podium, naked and unmasked at the White House, was Trump's authoritarian id. His deep need to dominate, to brutalize all before him in order to protect his pathetically weak ego. Amen, Terry. And this is how we in journalism should all be addressing the shit show that was Monday's rambling ass press conference, where Trump went on and on nonsensically for what felt like ages, at least to me, just complete nonsense, his dementia on full display. But of course, that's not what happened. The headlines in the papers that night and the next day were Trump addresses DC crime rate. Trump takes plan to address DC crime. Like, just ridiculous normalization of this authoritarian, delusional, clearly demented man who is holding our nation's capital hostage right now, instead of someone like Terry Moran, who, if you know the story, was fired by ABC News, which has completely bent the knee to Donald Trump's regime. And speaking truth, the headline should have said, 34-count felon lies about DC crime rate. Convicted criminal fabricates complete lies about DC crime rate. That's what the headline should have read, and they would have been accurate. That would have been journalism and accurate reporting. But that's not what you saw in the New York Times. It's not what you saw in the Washington Post and all these other headlines. They just normalized this complete shit show. This weak, pathetic man who doesn't have a leg to stand on like President Biden does here. And I'm just going to show you a gratuitous photo of President Biden stretching out at Rehoboth Beach. You think Donald Trump could do that? Hell no. He's got freaking cankles. He's obese. He has dementia. He is ignorant and stupid and a terrible businessman who has failed at everything he has ever touched. And he is failing America right now. But he's very dangerous because by hook and by crook, he managed to get into the highest levers of power in our nation. So we're going to have a hell of a time getting him and his whole crooked criminal regime out of power, because it's not just Trump, and I often read through the comments and I see everyone just, how do we get rid of Trump, impeach, all that's well and good, but it's not just Trump. Let me just give you a quick news flash. If Trump were to keel over and die tomorrow, which is quite possible, we are going to have a whole new, brand new set of much younger, just as evil and much smarter problems behind him. We're going to have J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, the mannequin doll that I refer to as Mike Johnson, and their puppeteers, Peter Thiel, and the rest of these really evil tech bros who are controlling from behind the scenes. Russell Vought, all of these people who developed and wrote Project 2025. Trump may be the head of the snake of the MAGA cult, but there's an entire phalanx of just complete sociopaths behind him. So that if Trump pops off tomorrow, J.D. Vance will put his fat cheeks right in there, and there will be a complete new regime, or continuing along with what they have already started to enact and empower through Project 2025. So I just want to let you guys know, we're up against an entire criminal, crooked regime at this point. So more reason to buckle in and buckle down, because the entire Republican Party, if you have not noticed, along with the Supreme Court, has become fully corrupted. They are absolutely anti-democratic. They are all in for fascism. So all the more reason for us to gather together under the pro-democracy tent and fight back with everything we can, with freaking brass knuckles. I'm telling you, because honestly, we are now at war. And I'm not advocating physical violence, but we got to fight dirty, like Gavin Newsom, like JB Pritzker. We got to fight back hard. That's the only way we're going to rescue our democracy. So until the next take, and I hope that will be very soon, I will see you back here. As always, wishing you peace. Deep breaths, everybody, as we continue to fight this fascist regime, and I will see you soon.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.